Hi, I'm Steve Neal, and this is Timbo. Thanks for joining us here on a catastrophic event for the first part of my interview with former investment manager for Spokane County, John Christina. In today's episode, we talk about why today's investment situation is different than at any time in our history, the unsustainability of our national debt, and the future of our Social Security. Hello, and welcome to a catastrophic event. One of the things that I really want to do on this show is shy away from politics, but looking at the economy, it's kind of tough to do at times. So, for those believing our economy is on a sound economic footing and doing fine, we wish you well. But for those who see a less rosy picture of our future, this interview is for you. Um, while we are not financial counselors and this is not financial advice, we will discuss our current economic situation and the things to consider when investing with my friend, John Christina. John has a BS degree in financial accounting and a master's degree in counseling. He attended the United States Air Force Air Command and Staff College. During his 20-year career in the Air Force, he was an accounting, finance, and budget officer and a comptroller. After he retired, he went into accounting and investing before becoming the investment manager, i.e. the big financial guy at the county for Spokane County Treasurer's Office. And we are privileged to be talking to him today. So normally what we do is we ask a series of questions and have our guest answer them.
Okay.
So the first question I'm going to ask you is, let's start by asking, why is today's economic situation different than ever before?
Oh, that's a great question, Steve. You know, the economy over the years is going to change, and a lot of things affect the economy. We've had wars, we've had natural disasters, we've had a lot of things that have affected the economy. But I think probably in the last 4 years, the thing that has impacted us the most is the pandemic and the recovery from the pandemic. If you think about just some of the things that happened during that time when our economy was basically shut down, kids couldn't go to school. A lot of people ended up working from home. A lot of people lost their jobs. So it really had an impact on our economy. And recovering from that, there was a lot of pent-up demand. A lot of people, couldn't go out to restaurants. They couldn't do this, couldn't do that. And now, once the pandemic was over with, there was all this pent-up demand to go out and start having fun and to purchase things and everything else. So I think that has probably been the biggest thing, the pandemic. We've also had technological improvements. If you follow what's happened with digitalization and artificial intelligence, has really changed the landscape out there in our economy. And so that's absolutely huge, and we're going to see more of that in the future. It's hard for me to really grasp what it's going to do to our economy in the future. It's just so widespread. So we have technological improvements. Of course, inflation. One of the things the pandemic brought on was increased government spending, out of control spending. And we're paying for that now. That inflation rate has been going up, and I think we're going to continue to see that as the money managers try to balance out as best they can. And finally, I think the other thing that really impacts us, of course, is geopolitical considerations. We've got the war in Ukraine, war in Israel, and we have trade disagreements, shall we say, with countries like China.
Right. And potential war over Taiwan with China.
There goes. Yep, there's another one. So there's a lot of things that impact our economy.
Yeah, things that we've never had and things that we're facing that most people are completely oblivious about.
Yep.
I mean, that's the most amazing thing, is China has flat out said, we are taking Taiwan back. And so where does the United States stand in that? I mean, we get most of our chips from Taiwan.
That's right.
We don't have a chip manufacturer. We don't have, and then of course, when we're at war with China, I don't think they're going to still be sending the boatloads of cheap junk to our stores.
That's right.
So that's going to affect us in ways I don't think most people have any idea about, and including me. I mean, as much as I look into that, I think we're heading into a totally different world. The Twilight Zone.
Oh yeah.
And it's not going to be pretty. So the next question I have is, as I write this question, which was a couple of weeks ago, the U.S. national debt was 34,775 billion, and a whole bunch of other things. And by the time we talk, it will likely be over 35 trillion, which it may or may not be, but it's pushing the ball really hard. So, to whom do we owe this money?
Well, that's a good question, Steve. Basically, our money belongs, or it's being owed to a lot of institutions, government institutions. We have government at all levels invest in bonds and notes. And so that's one of the things. We also have private investors out there. We also have pension funds that invest in the economy. So those are some of the big ones. It's broken down domestically and foreign. I would say that foreign investment, probably about 30 to 35% is picked up by foreign investors of one type or another, either governments or individuals or private institutions.
So when you say our government itself, so like, say the FBI, theoretically they have extra money, they'll go out and buy T-bills, or?
Right. What happens is at each level of government, whether it's at the federal level, the state level, or even at the local level, they have cash management trying to run their business, so to speak, dealing with cash flow and everything else. So one of the safest investments you can have is with government bonds and notes. And so they do that. In fact, Spokane County, I'd say that about 70% of our investment portfolio when I was there was invested in Treasury bonds and notes.
Oh, okay. And I know that, this is kind of deviating a little bit there, but China has been dumping some of our T-bills, like a lot of our T-bills lately. And, you can get all kinds of, you can read into that a lot of ways. But the reason, or a reason, from what I understand, why foreign governments buy U.S. debt is for actual liquidity, right?
That's correct.
Well, why don't you explain that to me?
Yeah, so one of the things we have a foreign policy, and one of the things we've become very good at doing is doling out money to different countries around the world for a variety of reasons. But also because of our economic structure, the geopolitical structure that we have, a lot of it is based on the dollar. So we have foreign countries that will invest in our dollar because it's considered safe in a lot of circles. And in fact, today, even with all the volatility we have, it's still a pretty safe investment at this point.
Okay. So our government racks up another $1 trillion in debt every 3 months or less. How is that sustainable? And what happens when we can no longer borrow this money?
Well, the truth of the matter is it's not sustainable. And, we've been kicking this can down the road for years and years and years. And I know we're not talking politics, but, regardless of whether the Democrats or Republicans are in power, they've all been kicking the can down the road. And
for years.
For years and years. And it's at the point where we're spending $1 trillion a year. There is no budgeting at the federal level. They'll call it a budget, but when you're spending $1 trillion every 3 months and you don't have revenue to come in to offset that expense,
right,
you've got a real big problem. And that's what we're seeing at the national level.
So what happens when we just, there's no more money to borrow, no one's going to loan us any more money, or I'm assuming that probably the next step is, and actually it's kind of happening, is the interest rate has to go up because people are becoming less confident in our ability to pay that debt back. I mean, I can't imagine that, 35 trillion. I mean, I don't know, we could just maybe write a check for it, but,
Give a check.
it just amazes me, people are still willing to loan us money when we owe that much money. Boy, when that money rolls out, what are they gonna do?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of tough to really try to figure out what's going to happen because we've never been in that situation before. But if you take a look back in history, if you take a look back at the Weimar Republic in Germany, before Hitler came to power, and actually part of the time when he was in power, the value of the Reichsmark went down so much, it was, you'd have to bring in a wheelbarrow full of Reichsmarks just to buy a loaf of bread. A little bit further along in history, back in the probably the 80s and 90s, Zimbabwe had a huge problem where they actually had a Zimbabwe bill, I think it was $1 billion.
I have $100 trillion bill.
Right.
I kid you not.
Right, and it's
dude, I'm rich.
Yep, and it's equivalent to an American dollar is like $2. So that's what inflation does. It's crazy.
Yeah, you think buying a burger is expensive now? Just wait.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So, according to the U.S. debt clock, the U.S. has over $200 trillion in unfunded liabilities. What is that? And should we be nervous about it?
Yeah, I would say it's something definitely to be nervous about. What unfunded liabilities are, Steve, is the government has made certain promises out into the future. For instance, for Social Security, they promise that you'll get a benefit. You work during your lifespan, your employer contributes to it, you contribute to it, and then when you retire, there's money available for you to help offset your retirement costs.
Right.
So we've got Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, which is a federal program also shared by the states. But then you also have federal pensions. Civilians and military who rely on getting a pension. So, and what the government is saying is we don't have the funds at this point, to pay off in the future. So that puts a big burden on society as a whole, on workers that are out there, and it also caused a lot of stress with investors and with retirees.
Can you say haircut?
Big time.
I mean, yeah, that should make everybody really nervous because for the younger people, you're putting money into a fund that you're not going to get anything out of, and that's going to be insolvent.
Yep.
And for the people like me who put money in for 37 years, 38 years, whatever it was, I'm not going to get much money back. I mean, I'll get some, but I'm not going to get much. Maybe. I mean, it depends on how things go in the very near future when I can retire. Basically, it's a huge, what's the term? Ponzi.
A Ponzi scheme, yes, because we're paying future assets with the current money that's coming into the government. Right. And, interesting about Social Security, there was, I believe, a police department in Houston, Texas, down in that area that opted out of Social Security back in I believe it was in the 80s. And so instead of putting in the roughly 13% employer and employee contributions in Social Security, they invested it in the market privately. And the results of that were just phenomenal. 60 Minutes did an interview on that, and they talked to them, and the returns were just phenomenal, much better than what you would get by having Social Security. So there's something to be said for private investment. The big thing about Social Security, of course, is it does provide a safety net, if you will, for people who have no other means of income. From a financial planning standpoint, when we talk about getting ready for retirement, Social Security is one leg of a three-legged stool. So the other two legs include, pensions that you receive from either your company or if you work for a government agency. Okay. And then the third leg on that stool is what you can do for yourself. So that would be 401ks, IRAs, things like that.
Yeah, and I worked for Kaiser Aluminum until they shut down, so we had a pension plan, and so I just started actually this January getting some money out of that, but when Kaiser, when I lost my job, Kaiser rolled off their pension plan into the government I can't remember the abbreviation, but basically the same fund that Pan America took over and or was taken over on and whatever. And so basically my pension plan is now in the same pocket of money as my Social Security. So that,
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure it's a lot less than what they promised you, right?
but mucho less so. But be grateful, peasant. You're getting something, right? So, I guess we just kind of went over that. But should we be nervous about receiving our Social Security when we qualify?
Well, you know, Steve, Social Security has always been called the third rail of politics. And whether the Republicans or Democrats are in office, no one really wants to mess with this huge block of people that are getting this huge benefit from the government.
Right.
And and when they do try to change things, they really hear from the populace out there. And so it's been called the third rail of politics. But I think we will probably see some sort of Social Security. It depends. There's different ways that they can handle that. One would be by increasing the age for retirement, increasing the contributions to the folks who are still working. Neither of those are really desirable. They could cut the benefits of the people who are currently on Social Security. So those are just some of the things that can be done to mitigate it. I personally think one of the things they can do is just, there's a cap right now on the amount of wages that go into Social Security. I think if they release that cap.
I see.
It would really help out a lot. We'd have more money coming in, more cash flow coming in.
So, as I recall, I think what you're saying is, so if you earn, say, $120,000, and so Social Security stops at 80,000.
Yeah.
They don't take over 80,000, whatever it is.
Exactly. It's based on, in that particular case, and I'm not sure of the numbers, it's been a while since I've worked with it, but in that particular case there, you're making, let's say you're making $120,000 a year, but Social Security is only going to take out an amount equivalent to 80,000, up to 80,000.
Right.
So there's $40,000 of income that could be taxed with Social Security that could help out.
I mean, that could go to Ukraine or something practical. Whoops.
What an idea.
Sorry.
Wow, what a concept.
Okay. In 2000, the median income was $31,821. The median house was $164,282, and the median car was $22,296. Today, the median income is $39,536. The median house is $412,782, and the median vehicle is $51,338.
Wow.
Why did the cost of houses and cars go up so much faster than our raises, than our income?
Well, that's another good question. I think that if you take a look at, for instance, what it boils down to, Steve, is basically supply and demand. And as the supply is reduced, then the prices become increased. Give you an example of the housing market in the state of Washington. Right now it is a lot better for the builders to build multi-family housing than it is to build single-tract homes, and that's a result of some of the policies coming out of the state. The Growth Management Act, et cetera,
okay.
has limited what can be done with tract housing in suburban areas. And the big emphasis of government is on bringing people into the cities and having more compact. They call it stacking and packing, I believe.
And another thing, of course, is the big money from like BlackRock and Vanguard has entered into the private sector for houses.
Right.
I mean, they were the ones who would bid $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 more on a house without even looking at it, and they would buy all these houses and then they turn them into rentals.
Right.
So, I guess you're going to just be a renter.
Well, you'll own nothing, you'll be happy. I've heard that somewhere.
Rumor has it.
But I think, Steve, that these big corporations. I mean, I get texts and emails every day asking that they want to buy my house.
I know.
You know,
Yeah, I got a
and,
call yesterday.
well, that's wonderful, but I don't really want to sell my house. I don't want to sell my house to you.
Right.
I'd rather sell it to another family who's coming up.
Right.
Rather than giving it to a corporation. But that's just me.
Well, plus the fact, I mean, they're still doing it. That's what amazes me, because the housing market has slowed down significantly nationwide. And, here is no different. In my neighborhood, there's probably about 6 or 7 houses for sale. And, last year, if a house came up on the market, I mean, it was gone in 3 days,
Right.
4 days at the most. And, well, there are several of those houses that have been on the market for a month or more. And so, if they're still buying in this market, you have to wonder why. Because you're not. I don't believe, with the number of people who have lost their jobs and the number of people who can no longer come up with, the $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 down for a down payment, that you're going to see the upswing in buyers anymore.
Right.
So that, to me, seems like a losing proposition. You're buying something to lose money on it. So there has to be an ulterior motive.
Yeah. What I've heard is that the best time to buy real estate is when there's blood in the streets. But it doesn't seem to be the case now. I mean, like you said, the market, the housing values are still pretty well. They've gone down a lot since the peak about a year and a half ago, but they're still pretty darn high.
Right.
And of course, when corporations own things, they're not going to take care of the house as would someone who owns it.
Right.
So that's a concern I have in these neighborhoods where you have these corporate owners that are basically absentee landlords.
Yep.
Will not keep up with their properties. You'll see, the quality of life in the neighborhood go down because they don't take care of the properties.
You're right. And there's a certain level, whether you agree with it or not, there's a certain level of responsibility when that is your single biggest purchase of your life.
Exactly.
I mean, there are those people who buy houses and just let them run down. I mean, and you're seeing that a lot more lately. Maybe it's because they can't afford to keep it fixed up. They can't afford to do this. Maybe they're working, 15 part-time jobs to be able to afford that house. I don't know. But, still, that is the largest investment you will make in your life. And, if you want to keep that investment up, you want to maintain that house.
Absolutely. And back in the day, you probably remember the days when you had to have a 20% down payment.
Right. Yep.
We made borrowing way too easy. And a lot of the mortgage companies that were out there, just were doing some ridiculous things with offering loans to people who should never even be considered to have a loan. There was one product out there called the Ninja loan.
The Ninja?
Ninja.
Wow.
That stands for no income, no job. So it's just amazing some of the things that happened during that bubble that we had, and we saw the results of that. The market tanked pretty bad back in 2008.
I don't want to go too far down this rabbit trail, but I just read an article yesterday, in fact, that in California, the state, which is massively in debt, somehow came up with the money to start securing loans for newcomers without any down payment and without a job. They can start buying houses.
Wow.
I'm sure that's going to work out really well.
That is a recipe for total success if I ever heard it. Wow.
Thank you for joining us on the first part of our interview with John Christina. We take our pledge to help save lives through education seriously, and we'll put several great links on why the economy is different today than ever before, and links to help you on your own research below the video on our YouTube channel and on the resource tab of acatastrophicevent.com. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment on this video, and thanks for watching.